Mark's eyes blinked open, and he turned around to find his friend with a bunch of wood. He must be attempting to make a camp, Mark said to himself as he walked over. He pulled his blue t-shirt off, and his friend stared in awkwardness before turning away. Mark grabbed his purple tank top out of his bag and put it on. "You can look now," Mark said, and his friend turned around, cocking his head at Mark's clothes. "What? Do you not like my clothes or something?" "Because I'm not changing." "No, it's just you're a grown man with red hair, carrying a green bag and wearing a purple tank top that's sort of small on you," his friend said. Mark slapped his face. "I don't care, it's comfy," Mark replied, helping up his friend set up the fire. Most of their day was spent finding food and making the fire. Finally, the fire was done, and Mark had been sitting by it, once again, shirtless, as he wanted to warm up before sleeping. His new friend, however, didn't take his shirt off, and accidentally burned it. "Hold still," Mark said, grabbing water from the ocean and throwing it over his friend's sleeve. The fire was put out, but the orange and red striped shirt was ruined. "Oh man, I liked that shirt," he whined, and Mark asked for the shirt. The Irishman felt uncomfortable taking his shirt off in front of Mark, mainly because he had a girlfriend waiting for him when he got back home. All Mark had was a dog and his few friends. Mark used his knife to cut the sleeves evenly short, and made a t-shirt for the man. "There. It's better. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to keep warming up," Mark said, turning his back to the fire and getting warm. The light shined on his back, making it look like it was glowing. "Oh, that's good. Real good," he said before grabbing his bag and grabbing the journal again. He began to write in it, and when he finished, he fell asleep. The green-haired Irishman ended up falling asleep too. Luckily for them, the fire didn't spread. Mark woke up the same way as the day before, but instead his new friend was sleeping right next to him. He gently nudged the Irishman over and stood up, shaking the sand off of his body. He grabbed his tank top and put it back on, fixing his hair as well. His days here had been fast, surprisingly, and he was hoping to get home. But at the same time, he was enjoying the whole survival thing. His friend woke up, and Mark finally realized the important thing he never asked. "Hey, now that you're up, I've been meaning to ask you. What's your name?" Mark asked, and the Irishman smiled at him awkwardly. "My name's Sean, but most people call me Jack." "Is that like your middle name or something?" "No, my middle name's William," Jack said. Mark smiled. "Then why Jack?" "I don't know. My mom gave me the nickname, and then there was this incident with the football, or as you call it, soccer, and I gained my nickname, but I don't go by it anymore." "Speaking of names, what's yours?" Jack asked, and Mark smiled. "Mark. My name's Mark Fishbach," Mark said, and Jack nodded, folding his newly short-sleeved shirt up and sticking his feet into the water. Luckily, he had shorts on. Mark walked over and did the same thing, pulling his pants up. After a few minutes, there was a sharp pain at Mark's leg. He put his hand in the water and grabbed something sharp. He pulled it out, and it looked like a knife crossed with a spear. "Hey, I could kill a fish with this," Mark said before refocusing his attention to his leg. Luckily, it was just a small cut, but there was a tiny bit of blood. Mark shrugged it off and got into a crawling position. He held the weapon in his hand and started looking for movement in the water. He managed to grab a fish, and he smiled at it. "I'm going to name you Bob, and you're going to be our dinner," he said. And that's when Jack started to make the next fire. The two ate Bob, and made jokes about it all night before finally going to bed. The next week went by, and on the 14th day, somebody had stolen their food and ran off. Mark wanted to know who it was, and so did Jack. So they decided to head to the mountain, which is where a trail of food crumbs led. They climbed it and looked around. It was moist and cold. Mark had made a torch so they could see, and Jack didn't dare stay behind. "Mark, are you sure we're going to find anything in here? Like, who would live here?" Jack asked, and Mark shushed him and started to walk quietly. They found a small campsite and seen two guys that looked like them. The two men heard them and walked over. Turns out they were just wearing wigs. Their names were Felix, who was a 26-year-old Swedish man with dark blue hair, and Ken, a southern man who was 31 years old and had a magnificent beard. They told Mark and Jack that they had gotten hungry and had seen that there was food and wanted it. Mark and Jack were willing to share after learning this, and the four sat in the mountain cave around the small fire and ate. "So you guys have been here for 2 weeks?" Ken asked in a thick southern accent, and Jack nodded, eating some of the cooked fish that they had caught. Felix looked over and Mark and eyed him. "Is something wrong?" Mark asked, and Felix looked at him closer. "I know you. I met you on a cruise. Ken found me afterward and dragged me on ashore," Felix said, and Mark remembered where he knew Felix from. "Oh yeah, you're the Swedish guy I talked to about video games. Where did we leave off again?" Mark replied, and Felix thought for a second before starting. "I think you mentioned some indie horror game. I don't remember what, though. And then that's when the crash happened, and we arrived on the island." "Okay, then. Anyway, how long have you and Ken been here?" About a week, Felix replied, taking a glance at his survival buddy and chuckling to himself. It's definitely been different from my normal life. I hope my pugs are okay. He mumbled the last part to himself when Mark remembered that Tyler was probably wondering where he was. Maybe he was going to look for him, and Mark shook it off as probably nothing too serious and continued to eat the food their newfound friends had just given them.